With all the pending free agents the Buccaneers have, I'll tell you which one is the most vital to the Bucs' success and must return. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. I am your host, James Yarcho, writer over at Bucs Report, here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. This episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. We have opened up the mailbag. We have tons of questions to get to today, including which hire on the defensive side of the ball will have the biggest impact, whether or not the Glazers could be interested in selling the team, and which offensive coordinator I prefer. That is all coming up a little bit later. This one is going to start off with a question from Terry, who asks, who is the most important free agent you think we have to retain? Terry, that is a really good question. The obvious answer is, of course, Mike Evans. Evans is going to make a decision whether he wants to continue playing or not, and I cannot imagine he's going to want to end his career with the kind of season that he had in 2025. That's not how he's built. That's not the kind of player or person that he is. Now, I am of the belief that if Mike continues to play, it will be in Tampa. I don't think he's in a spot now where he's going to consider other teams. He loves this franchise, the community, Baker, the rest of his teammates. If he was going to leave, it would have been the last time he became a free agent. Now, you did have Rachaad White on the Loose Cannons podcast. He made a little bit of a passing comment where he said something to the effect of, if Mike comes back. I can't remember the exact quote. And then later in the show, he said he wasn't going to put words in Mike's mouth. But I don't know if Rachaad was referring to retirement or referring to leaving. As I said, I think if Mike plays, it'll be in Tampa, and I think he does return. It does not matter who the offensive coordinator is. They'll be thrilled to have a guy like Evans, and they're going to figure out a way to get him the ball. All of that said, that's too easy of an answer. That's not what you came here for. It is a little bit of a cop-out if I just say Mike Evans and move on. So among some of the top names that are going to hit the market for the Buccaneers, you have Haason Reddick, Rachaad White, Jamel Dean, Levante David, Greg Gaines, Riley Dixon, Logan Hall, Sterling Shepard, Deion Jones, Cade Otton, Kendall Vildor, and Teddy Bridgewater. Rachaad is gone. I've been saying it for a while, and while he didn't really hide that on his podcast appearance, he did try to play it off a little bit that he could come back. But honestly, he's not that good of an actor. He is gone. Not a huge deal. I like him. I wish him the best. I hope that he has success wherever he goes. Cough, cough, Washington. But that's not going to break the Bucs. Deion Jones, I think he's going to be a solid depth piece. I think he comes back, but it'll be a role like the one that he's already had with this team. Cade Otton, I love him. A lot of Bucs fans don't. I think he's back, and the two sides can easily work out a deal for him to stay. They could look to upgrade. There's a lot of really good tight ends set to hit the market, but I think that is going to end up ultimately being a reunion. Levante, I think that's a retirement. I think he's done playing in the NFL. But the most important pending free agent that the Bucs need to bring back, I think it's actually Keeft. You don't need to bring back Reddick because you need an upgrade desperately at edge rusher. He couldn't get the job done. There's no need to bring him back. Jamel Dean, you could bring him back, but you have two starters in-house already, and you can spend the money that you would spend on Jamel Dean elsewhere. Gaines and Hall, I would like to have them back, but neither one is the kind of guy that you can't replace. I think what Keeft does in terms of his blocking was evident and sorely missed down the stretch last season. He is the guy that can really get out there as a lead blocker in the run game and spring Bucky Irving for those explosive plays. I do not think that it's a coincidence that when Bucky was breaking off 30, 40, 50-yard runs last season, you had Keeft healthy and on the field. The offensive line being healthy plays a big part, but Keeft is really an unsung hero in the offense. He doesn't get the attention or the stats or the accolades, but what he provides for this team is so huge that I think they're going to find a way to get him back for next season and probably beyond. And then if you have an offensive coordinator like Mike McDaniel calling the shots, he is going to love having a weapon like Keith as part of his arsenal. Speaking of the run game, Tom asks, who is a good Rachaad White replacement in free agency, or should we draft a late round running back with the best pass catching ability and elite blocking? That is a great question. Now, I have not done a deep dive into draft prospects yet. There are some that I'm familiar with, but I have not really done a serious study on any of these position groups. I'll get started on that after the Bucs are done with their coaching searches and as we're starting to gear up towards the scouting combine and free agency. So I do not have any backs that I'm confident could fill that role in the late rounds as of right now. If you want to go on day 2 with a running back, it's going to be Nicholas Singleton out of Penn State. He would probably be my favorite guy there. I don't think the Bucs would use a day 2 pick on a running back unless they address a lot of needs on the defensive side in free agency. If you're going to go running back on day 2, you might as well go Jadarian Price out of Notre Dame. If it wasn't for Jeremiah Love, Price would have gotten a ton more production and would be getting a lot more attention than he is. But even still, he's the 3rd ranked running back prospect on Pro Football Focus. As for free agency, it's going to depend on who the OC ends up being and what kind of running back that they want. You certainly, every OC wants someone that can do everything, right? That can block, that can catch, that can run. Bucky's blocking improved dramatically from his rookie season to last season, but it still wasn't as good as Rachaad's. So when I look at the running back landscape and try to find someone that can be that 3rd down back, that can pick up those blitzes, that RB2 behind Bucky, and isn't going to cost a lot, there are a couple of names that pop out to me. I think you could bring in Nick Chubb if he's healthy, and then he can fill that role beautifully. He is a do-it-all back, but he isn't the guy that he was in Cleveland, and that's fine. You don't need him to be that guy. If he understands that he's at a point in his career where he's not the lead dog and he has to play a certain role, then he is a great veteran presence that can help this offense and can fill that void. Another is Alexander Mattison. Obviously, if Mike McDaniel is the hire, there's a lot of familiarity there. He got plenty of snaps and plenty of opportunities, even with Devon Achane there in Miami, and he would be used the same way in Tampa that he was with the Dolphins. He knows the offense inside and out already. And then the last one that I'm going to bring up is Brian Robinson. He's still pretty young. He was a 3-down back for the Commanders before they got rid of him during the offseason. And while being Christian McCaffrey's backup usually leads to some solid playing time, it did not in 2025. McCaffrey was an absolute beast from beginning to end. I think that he would see the chance to get on the field more and showcase his skills in the Bucs offense, where they use all 3 backs. And, he would look at that as a chance to potentially parlay that into a bigger deal and a bigger role if that's what he wants in 2027. He didn't get a real opportunity to showcase anything with San Francisco this season. McCaffrey was like the one player that didn't get hurt all year for the 49ers. Go figure. God forbid Bucky goes down again, you would have a starting caliber 3-down back right there waiting in the wings that you can just plug and play. I know a lot of people love Sean Tucker. Tucker does not do all of the things that Rachaad did that you're looking to replace. So I think, let's say Brian Robinson is the signing that you have. Bucky's your RB1, Robinson's your RB2. Tucker, who is a free agent, but he's a restricted free agent, so he's going to be back. He's still the RB3. And if Bucky goes down, then Brian Robinson is going to get the lion's share of the snaps and the opportunities in the offense. I think all of these guys will likely make significantly less than Rachaad will end up getting on the open market and would really help bolster this running back stable. Now, what about these offensive coordinator options and who I think is best for the job? That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades that you can make. And that's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. I love how simple Quo makes everything. It works right from your phone or your computer, and you can even keep your existing number. And Quo's smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next steps so the details never slip through the cracks. It's no surprise that Quo is the number one rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnfl. That's quo.com/lockedonnfl. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. The draft pick positions are set, and so many teams are looking for their franchise quarterback. If you ever wanted to be a pro QB getting drafted first overall, now you can. There's the mobile game just for you called Ultimate QB Football Legend. In this game, you step into the cleats of a number one draft pick quarterback, and you'll deal with the ups and downs of a quarterback career, from rookie nerves to playoff drama. Ultimate QB is totally free to play, has no ads, and works 100% offline. Just head over to ultimate-qb.com. That's ultimate-qb.com, or search for Ultimate QB in your app store. And we've got something special just for you guys. Use the promo code Locked On, all caps, in the game store to get a free boost at the start of your career. Ultimate QB Football Legend QB1, it's your legacy. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. And thank you for making Locked On the number one sports podcast network. If you haven't already, check out the Everydayer Club. There's ad-free episodes, daily newsletters. We're working on getting that group chat up and running. There's exclusive perks. The link is in the show notes. All right. My guy Evan on Twitter wrote in and said, McDaniel or Shieldhouse, if we hire someone like Robinson, meaning Zach Robinson, I am writing the season off completely. They will just get fired alongside Todd next offseason. All right, so I've said from the jump that Mike McDaniel is my top choice. From the moment he was fired, I texted it out to the insiders, the Everydayer, All Access members. McDaniel is the guy, in my opinion. I put it McDaniel, then Monken, and then everyone else. I'll do a deep dive into McDaniel coming up on tomorrow's show that you all can check out before his interview with the Bucs. Don't worry, that is coming. Now, he did interview for the Baltimore Ravens head coaching job. I do think that is one of few head coaching opportunities that could actually entice Mike McDaniel enough to not take an offensive coordinator position, but we've talked numerous times about the reports there that McDaniel would actually rather take a great OC opportunity than an okay head coach opportunity. And I think for him in this stage of his career, that's the right move. And look, I don't dislike Zach Robinson at all. I think there were some serious quarterback issues in Atlanta. I'm not sold on Penix still. And I think as the season progressed, he really started to find a groove and get things figured out. I think he could find a lot of success in Tampa because the quarterback, the offensive line, when healthy, and the receiving weapons are all better than they were in Atlanta. Robinson was one of the favorites back a few years ago, and I think for all the same reasons, he should still be someone the Bucs fans get excited over. I mean, Ian Rappaport tweeted out Wednesday that while Robinson had taken an interview with another team, he was still a very strong candidate for the Buccaneers offensive coordinator opening. As for Shieldhouse, you guys know that I'm a big fan. He's an Illinois guy. He was the person that I wanted the Bucs to hire last year, but I'm not sure that he has the experience that Bowles is looking for. Remember, he was already really close to the chopping block this year, so this hire has to be a slam dunk. That's why I thought Monken was probably at the top of the Bucs wish list. Now, even though nothing is official until a contract is signed, as you all well know, it seems as though Monken is going to follow Harbaugh to the New York Giants. We always knew that was a possibility, that he went with Harbaugh wherever Harbaugh ended up landing. And I did mention it numerous times on this show, but I also think that it might have been situational. Maybe he likes the idea of joining him in New York with Jackson Dart, but would not have liked to join him in, say, Miami or Arizona, where they really don't have an answer at that quarterback position. But there is still a chance that he decides not to go. We just don't know yet because nothing is official. Speaking of offensive coordinators, Ben asks, James, why don't the Bucs ever sign an offensive coordinator to a 2+ year contract? Why put themselves in a situation every season with 1-year deals? So the simple answer here is that they do sign these guys for more than 1 year. Now, while coaching contracts are not made available to the public the way player contracts are, they do sign these guys to multi-year deals. Unfortunately for the Bucs, they've just been losing guys after 1 year, whether that's because of head coaching jobs or because of firings. You know, teams cannot block coordinators from interviewing for head coaching jobs. So when you have coordinators that are doing, their job and they're doing it extremely well, other teams are going to come knocking. You're just kind of stuck there, left in limbo. Now, you could have a situation like the Bucs did last year where Cohen had interviewed with the Jaguars. And then after the interview, Jason Light approached him and said, we want you here. We would love to keep you. You're vital to the success of this team. You're a big part of this franchise's future. What is it going to take from us to have you withdraw from consideration for that head coaching job? Then Liam Cohen tells him, and you give it to him. And he publicly withdraws from consideration. Then things change. Shad Khan fires the GM. All of a sudden, Liam Cohen is ghosting the Bucs. He's not returning texts. He's not returning phone calls. And he just flat out disappears to sneak off to Jacksonville to do another interview and sign a contract to become a head coach. These coaches are not on year-to-year deals. They do sign for multiple years. You just can't block them from leaving for a promotion. That's how these things work. So in the case of Cohen, he had a multi-year deal. They were changing that deal to meet the needs that he was asking for, and then he left anyway. So the simplest answer to this was they do. It's just that is the coaching landscape of the NFL. If you have a position coach, if you have a coordinator, anybody who could be interviewing for a potential promotion cannot be blocked by the team. If you remember back last year, Liam Cohen wanted to interview guys that he had on the Bucs staff in 2024, and the Bucs blocked them. They blocked every single one. They said, no, absolutely, unless you're going to make them an offensive coordinator, which would have been a promotion, then you're not interviewing these guys to take all of these coaches off of our staff. So that's the way that it generally works. And again, a lot of times we'll get loose framework for what these coaching contracts are, but it's typically only the head coach where we get years, we get, approximate dollars. We knew that the Bucs had offered to make Liam Cohen the highest paid offensive coordinator in the NFL to prevent him from going to Jacksonville. It wasn't all about money in that situation. He probably got more to be a head coach, but it was about the opportunity to be a head coach. Those figures are not made public the same way that I can get on here and I can look up every player contract in the NFL. I can tell you what the guaranteed money is. I can tell you what, the average annual value is. I can tell you where, teams can get out without a dead cap. I can tell you the dead cap by year. All of that information is public. With coaches, it just isn't. Could the Glazers be interested in taking on a smaller ownership role? That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. New Year gets going. A lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is a big one. Between busy workdays, cold winter nights, and packed schedules, having an easy, reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference. That's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They are rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease, and it's easy to see why. Home Chef was a game changer in my house. You get meals that come ready to fit your schedule. 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, quick lunches, with one kid running off to hockey, another one off to basketball and guitar lessons. This has taken so much stress off of our shoulders when we're all having to operate on different schedules. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering my listeners 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. If you ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. When you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. So stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. Indeed sponsored jobs helps your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster. It boosts your post to the people who are the best match for your role, and that makes the real difference. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Ripping things up here on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, and Phantom Vash on Twitter asks, with more NFL teams selling minority stakes, would the Glazers do the same? Note, they have done this already with the Manchester United. That's a really good question, and not one that I ever would have thought to address on this show without you asking. But the honest answer is, I don't know. I'm sure there's a price where they would consider it. Cue the $1 million man, Ted DiBiase. Everyone has a price. But to be honest, I don't think that that is something that they are interested in. Again, this is pure speculation on my part. But knowing what I know and knowing what a lot of you actually already know, the Glazers love the Bucs. And they are beloved within that building, from the players to the coaches to the front office to the everyday regular working folks that are inside of that building. And I think they view the Bucs very differently than they do with the Manchester United. This was the team that their father bought when he had tried to get into franchise ownership. And for those of you that watched Raise the Flags, the 10-part documentary on Amazon, you know that Malcolm Glazer had tried to buy other sports franchises first. He had tried to get into baseball. He had tried some other avenues, but the Bucs were the ones that came available that he decided, you know what, that's the team that I want to go get. He bought them, and then he turned them around and made them a Super Bowl champion. To a certain extent, I think the Glazer family views this team as their legacy. This is their baby. Man U, yeah, super popular team, plays the most popular sport in the world. But I don't think that they have the emotional connection to that team that they do with the Bucs. So I would say you probably won't see them sell off any stakes anytime soon. It is very possible that the family gets together and they decide, you know what, it's time to move on. It's time for somebody else to take control, and they just sell the team outright. Or in what I think is probably the more likely scenario, you're probably looking at having a third generation of that family step into ownership roles down the line. Robbie G asks, what is the biggest impact hire on defense, and why haven't we heard any names for those positions? I think the biggest impact will be whoever takes over as the defensive line coach. They have to get that natural pass rush into a much better place than it is now. And finding the right coach will help that process along. Of course, some of that plays into personnel for sure, 100%. But you need the right position coach to really get these guys to where they need to be. Now, you're probably not going to hear any names for the position coaches anytime soon. They want to take care of the coordinator hires first and then shift their focus. You're also limited in who you can speak with. Coaches that are on staffs of teams that are still playing, you can't talk to them. They're preparing for playoff games. They're still considered in season. You can't go and try to poach those guys. Now, there are caveats to that where if they have a bye week, they can do a virtual interview and things like that. But the Bucs can talk to coaches that are on staffs where the head coach was fired because those staffs are essentially disbanded. They can talk to coaches that are on staffs whose seasons are over. But again, you have to get permission from those teams in order to interview, coaches that are still under contract and employed by those teams. The most important thing right now is to figure out your offensive coordinator and your special teams coordinator. Your OC will probably have a guy in mind already as far as who he wants to bring in to replace Thad Lewis as the quarterback's coach, but you might also see other members of the offensive staff change once the OC is hired. He may decide that he wants a different running backs coach. He may decide that he wants a different tight ends coach. I don't think that he would get rid of the offensive line coaches. Kevin Carberry does an absolutely outstanding job. Any OC would be excited to have him as part of the staff. I think Skip Peete has done a great job. I was just throwing out running backs coach as an example. But yeah, do not panic or worry that you haven't heard any names for those defensive position roles. They're putting together their list of candidates. They may have already interviewed some of these guys, but teams do not have to disclose who they have interviewed. They can, but it's not required. So for all we know, they've had numerous interviews for the D-line, cornerbacks, and safeties coaches positions. Last one real quick from Mad Dog. Mad Dog, I know you sent in a bunch. I'll get to more of them in some upcoming episodes, but Mad Dog asks, if the Buccaneers are able to hire Mike McDaniel as their new offensive coordinator, is he the heir apparent to be the Bucs' new head coach if and when Todd Bowles falters? That is certainly a good question, but it's not answerable without knowing the context. This is where context is vital. In this hypothetical, why did Bowles get fired? How was the offense performing? What happened that was bad enough that the coach was fired? As in, where did things go wrong? If it was a situation like 2025, okay, we'll use that as an example in this hypothetical. The defense is among the bottom 25% of the league in most statistical categories and rankings, while the offense is flourishing. Well, then, yes, it would seem likely that they would keep that continuity on offense, being that it was one of the best units in the NFL, and promote McDaniel to the head coach position. He wasn't bad as a head coach in Miami. And up until Harbaugh was fired, all signs pointed to McDaniel staying. He was even told that he was going to stay. He called his coaches and some of his players and said that he was staying. So that seems like an easy transition to keep the bright, young offensive mind on the staff, put him in charge of the team if things falter. The same could be said for Shieldhouse. It could be said for Robinson. It could be said really for Monken, even though Monken is almost 60 years old. If one side of the ball, the offense, is holding up their end of the bargain while the other, the defense, isn't, then you're going to want to keep the guy that's getting his job done. I don't think that would be a deciding factor when it comes to who they hire as to whether or not they could be the heir apparent or will be the heir apparent. But I could certainly see the path there for whoever the next offensive coordinator is to also be the next head coach of the Bucs if and when Todd Bowles leaves, whether that's because he retires, he steps down, he's let go, whatever the case may be. It is something that's probably in the back of their mind, but it is not it's not a key factor in their hiring process. All right, that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you for tuning into Locked On Bucs. Come back tomorrow. We are going to dive into Mike McDaniel as he prepares to interview with the Bucs and could potentially be this team's next offensive coordinator. Until then, follow everything on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Bucs in both of those places. Follow on YouTube with those notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. Check out the Everydayer Club and the All Access tier, lockedonbucks.supercast.com, or click the link in the show notes. If you want to support the show, but you don't want to be in the Everydayer Club, it's real simple. Like this episode on YouTube, leave a 5-star review wherever you get podcasts. It truly does help other Buccaneers fans find the show. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.